Welcome to NEXTGames video in the Omen series. This one covering how to solo the NM Kin. In this video, I'll give an overview of the Kin battle strategy that I suggest you use, and then give you an example of the fight using that strategy against Kin, using the ninja job with the warrior sub-job. Now Kin is a black mage with the warrior sub-job. As such, his spells will hit relatively hard, and his abilities and spells will hit harder than most of the other Kateri NMs, so you want to be sure to keep your trust out of range. As with all the other Kateri NMs, I recommend using your full Malignance set to help resist the majority of the spells and abilities thrown at you. Use the accessory slots from your normal TP set to make sure you can still self-skill chain reliably, and be sure to cap your subtle blow. With Merits and Turnian Dagger, you will only be 9 away, so either have Urine up or use a Churich Ring +1 to make sure you are capped. Next, let's talk about Kin's special abilities. The first and easiest to deal with is Death Sentence. It is a 5-second Doom ability that he will use, but only if the player with the most hate has significantly more cumulative enmity than the next highest person. With the strategy listed here, this move should never be used. Key to making sure he doesn't use this is to not use things such as Provoke if you are doing all of the damage, such as in our situation here. Therefore, I recommend you do not Provoke in this fight at all. There really shouldn't be a reason to be honest. Also note that this ability can be resisted, so if for whatever reason you do happen to see it, and you are wearing the full Malignant set, hopefully you will resist the Doom. Now Kin's second mechanic is a combination of Target and 11th Dimension, that he uses at 75%, 50, 25, and 10% health. Once he passes those thresholds, he will often use the target ability on the person with the most hate. If that same person has kept hate for 1 minute and 30 seconds after using target, then he will use 11th Dimension, which is a 3-minute terror on that individual. Dealing with this ability is the key to this fight, as otherwise you are looking at a minimum of 12 minutes just standing there terrorized while your trust frantically try to keep you alive. Therefore, I propose a different solution, or a series of solutions rather, that I have found to deal with this situation. Now trust selection is key for this fight. I'm using ArchEV to tank, as he has proven to hold hate very well when I'm spamming weapon skills, which is what we want. I'm also using Joachim for marches, Kurumuru for haste, and Dia, and Yoran Oran and Monburo to keep us all alive. Monburo also has another tool in his tool chest that will help us during this fight that I'll show you later. Let's go ahead and break this fight down into phases, just like we did with Jen. Between 100% hit points and 76% hit points, you have two options. You can run in and Provoke, and pull Kin to the side, and position him far away from your trust, and allow ArchEV to come to you. Now this will put your trust immediately into a safe range from AoE damage, but will drastically slow down the start of your fight because you will have a large amount of hate to begin with, making Kin bouncing back and forth between you and ArchEV for that first 25%. Now this strategy works very well, and it is safer than the second strategy I'll propose, but it does take quite a bit more time due to all of that bouncing back and forth and turning you have to do. Now alternatively, in the second approach I'll give here, is that you can run in and let all of the trust gather around you at the start of the fight for that first 25%. Note that this subjects your trust to the risk of being hit with AoE damage. Now at the start of the fight, really the only ability that is of risk to them is Malign Invocation, and it is really normally only a risk to Kurumuru. Note that you can always swap in another more robust red mage like Arcelia to combat this if you're finding it a problem and find that he's dying using this second strategy. Now since you didn't Provoke at the start using this strategy, and because you have so much enmity reduction on you, you can simply weapon skill and skill chain your way all the way to 75% hit points quite quickly, usually within only a few minutes, which is important as the last 25% of this fight can take a long time. So this is a strategy I will show you in this video example to try and speed up the first part of this fight. I also, in my positioning, managed to get Monburo to cover ArchEV at the start of this fight, which I thought was pretty amusing. Now let's talk about Phase 2. If you started with Provoking for positioning, then at 75% you should still be bouncing Kin back and forth between you and ArchEV, and should have the ability to get it off ArchEV quite easily with a solid weapon skill chain combination, or by simply letting in drop. This is what will allow you to get around target. When he uses target, I recommend that you make sure you then get hate off of ArcEV in the next 1 minute and 30 seconds after target was used. This will make it so that 11th hour never goes off and there is no 3-minute terror. If it's getting close to that minute and 30 seconds, you can go ahead and provoke it off of him, but only do it if you have to, as it will undoubtedly lead to you having to turn so ArcEV can in turn get hate back, which will slow down your progress. You then do the same bouncing process at 25% and 10% hit points when the target is used to avoid the 11th hour ability on all 4 occasions. Now this strategy is extremely reliable, but does take as long as 10 minutes longer than the second strategy that I recommend, mainly due to all of the turning back and forth you need to do in order to balance hate. Now as you get better at that, of course that 10 minutes longer will get less and less to where this is only a few minutes longer than the second strategy. Speaking of the second strategy, let's jump to that one. Now if you started the fight with our alternative strategy of just running in and letting ArcEV tank the first 25% while you blitz him with as much damage as possible, making sure that enmity reduction tools are up, then at 75%, Kin should use target on ArcEV. When he does this, go ahead and keep weapon skilling and keep your enmity reduction items up, so that 1 minute and 30 seconds after target is used, 11th dimension is used. Now once 11th dimension is used, ArcEV will be terrorized for 3 minutes, and you will immediately have hate on Kin. Use this time to quickly pull him to a safe distance away from your trust, and get to work on getting him to 50% hit points as soon as possible. Now since you are now the only one feeding him TP, this next 25% should also go very quickly. Now sometime between 60% and 50% hit points, ArcEV usually joins the fight again after his terror wears off. And as long as you kept your enmity reduction items up for the entire fight, he should have no problems getting Kin off of you quickly before 50% hit points. You will then bounce hate between you and ArcEV for the remainder of the 50% of this fight, just like in Strategy 1. Now using both of these strategies, I have noticed that Kin will not use target at 50% or at 10% hit points. I'm unsure as to why it's happening, but it's happened in all 6 runs that I have tried against Kin. So be ready for target and 11th dimension at 10% and 50% hit points, but know that often we avoid them with these 2 strategies. Just a few more items of note. The main ability that will kill your trust in this fight is Interference, which Kin gains access to at 25% hit points and inflicts substantial AoE damage to all of your trust. It's critical that your trust are at maximum casting range for this last 25%, or you're definitely not going to make it. Above 50% hit points, Kin will cast a Spear, Comet, Drain, Holy, and Stoneja, so all very easy to deal with. However, under 50% hit points, Kin will start casting a Spear 3 and Drain 3, which are both easy to deal with, but Comet becomes AoE, Impact will be cast, and Meteor, so definitely the damage that you will be taking goes up substantially in that last 50%. Also note that he will use Mana Font, sometime between 50% hit point and 85% hit points. Kin will absorb all physical damage when he is readying an ability, and all magic damage, which includes skill chain damage, when he is casting a spell. Therefore, it is critical you pay attention to his TP and casting patterns to predict when it's safe to weapon skill and skill chain. I also recommend just sticking to Blade 10 during Mana Font, as he will be continually casting spells, and you definitely don't want a skill chain. If ArcEV dies and Kin uses target, you are not out of options. Simply run behind Monborough so that he is between you and Kin, and he will almost immediately use cover. This breaks target. I've used this 3 times successfully now, so it does work very reliably. Now Kin can be hard. It's possible Trust will die sometime during this fight, but do not give up hope. In 4 of my 6 runs in the last week, I have had 1 or 2 Trusts dead by the end. Usually it's Koru that died during my first 25% blitz, or ArcEV, and he dies in that last 25%. In all cases, though, a win was still accomplished, so stick with it. The fight is long. Okay, that's enough of me talking. I hope you enjoy the run. That'll be it for our solo battle versus Kin. I hope you found that helpful, and consider taking him on yourself solo sometime. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Stay safe and stay healthy out there.